Okay, so hello, Internet. My name's Ryan, and I just wanted to show you a little bit about the project I'm working on because it's kind of neat, I think, and it's doing some neat things, and so I just wanted to share it. So just as a quick introduction, I've always loved these sorts of neural net machine learning things. This is a pretty popular example of one. Where you see an AI learning to play Mario. I think it's fun. It's just interesting watching a computer kind of beat its head against a wall over and over until it just kind of does something that looks smart just by luck. I think it's fun. So I started working on one of my kind of something inspired by it. So let me pull it up here. And so I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So the first big change. Well, I guess first off, just the goal of this project is just to kind of make something fun to watch. Like most of these videos you'll see online, they have like a very set goal. Like the goal of this is obviously to play Mario. You have ones here where it's like the goal is to make a car that drives this course. But with my system, the goal is really not it's not really defined like that. It's just to kind of make something interesting because that's the fun part about these things. I think is actually just watching them do stuff. I don't really care that they actually get it successfully. It's fun watching them run into walls and watching them actually get something progressively better and smarter. Um, so so really that's where I'm going with this is just to kind of make something fun to watch. It's to me it's interesting and fun watching these things evolve over time. So the first big change with my setup here is that all the actors or all the organisms, as I've been calling them, are simulated together at the same time in one world space. Typically, with the other things, you simulate a group of them, and then you pick the top five or whatever that achieve the goal the best, and then you mutate those, and then you simulate them again, and then you just repeat that. So mine's a little bit different is that in that you're just simulating all the organisms all at the same time, and really there is no like fitness function or whatever. There's nothing. There is no artificial culling of which ones are better or worse. It's just which ones survive, basically, which ones can reproduce and which ones can survive. So this is a randomly generated world. This is some land. It's in little hexes, little grids. This is some water, and then this is like a sun. Uh, this is the center, and so then it gets progressively less powerful farther away you are. So I can let's generate another one. They're kind of interesting. So let's just add an organism here, and I can show you kind of the interesting things this does. Let's see here. Okay, so here we go. Where is he? There he is. Okay, so here's one little dude. Here he is. You can click on him. And how my organisms work is that uh, they have their own code that they run, and so they have certain commands that are available to them, and so they can do some things like let's see here. They can like photosynthesize, which is they'll get energy if they're within the rays of the sun. They can reproduce, which is they'll make a copy of themselves, and then with some mutations, they can filter water, which is they'll get some energy out of the water. They can like root, um, which is they'll get some energy if they're on land. And then I have some other ones here that I haven't implemented yet, so we can just ignore those. So we can watch this guy, and so he has two commands. He will reproduce, and then his next command is he reproduces. So he just reproduces twice. The organisms have a like maturity number basically, so they won't reproduce until they've been alive for 100 world steps, and then that will reset if they reproduce. So we can do just step the world 10 times and nothing happens, but we can see we're at world age 10, so we can go little more. So he died. It looks like. Let's go to another one. Another thing is organisms are generated. Just like a completely new random one is added into the world every so often. So let's see here. So this one is a little bit different. This guy will filter water, which is good because he's over water. So he will get some energy from the water. And then he will root, which is bad because he's over water, so he'll get no energy from doing this command. And I guess I should say that organisms have 1,000 energy, and they will just run their code until they die, and then they die when they have no energy. That's all it does, really. So we can do some more steps here. And so you can see he lost some energy. Do some more. So he's losing some energy. And so he obviously won't reproduce. Like, he's just going to keep filtering water until he dies. So he'll just... And there you go. Now he's dead. So let's just add one more and see what he looks like. Okay, so this guy, the same thing. He's going to photosynthesize, which is bad because he's not next to the sun, so that's going to do nothing. And then he's also going to reproduce. So once he's been around for 100 world steps, he will make a copy of himself. But as you can see, he's been alive for 10 steps, and he's already about half energy, so he's going to die before he can reproduce. And he died. So let's just run. I'm going to run the whole simulation. And as it's running it, it's going to randomly generate new organisms every like 100 world steps or something like that. And it can go pretty quick. So we can... Okay, so I'll stop it. We can already see we have this extreme like blooming of organisms over here next to the sun, which kind of makes sense because there's a lot of energy you can get from the sun. And if we click on one of them, we can look. So this guy right here, here's his code. He photosynthesizes, roots, does all this stuff. And so that's pretty good. Good because he's over land. So these roots will get energy. And this photosynthesis, he'll get energy from the sun. He's pretty close, so he'll get quite a bit. So if we just run this, we can watch and see that he never actually dies. He doesn't, like, he's close enough to the sun that he can just live forever with his code. So that's fine. And I guess that's another thing I should say is my goal with this is not to like simulate nature. It's just to kind of get something that's fun to watch. So he doesn't really have any, like, no one's, like, there's no predators, like, no one's gonna eat him or anything. So it kind of makes sense that he could live forever. And so he does. He just sits here forever doing his thing. And so that's what a lot of these people do. You can see the ones on the edge are dying a little bit more because they're farther away, so it's harder for them to stay alive. And we can see a group here that's kind of starting out, another one up here and another one down here. It's kind of starting to push out into the water. And if we stop, then we can click on one, and you can see that their code has changed a little bit, and so they reproduce, and then they filter water a bunch and then photosynthesize once, which that makes sense because they're really not close to the sun, so photosynthesizing doesn't really do any good. And they're in water, so they get a bunch of energy from the water. So we can run him and watch him go. And so we can see these groups growing, which I think is kind of fun. It's a little bit cheaper for them to filter water than it is for them to root, for them to get energy from the land. So they typically grow out in the water. But we can see maybe there's a group here trying to... So let's look at these guys. So these guys are rooting and reproducing, which is good because they're not close to the sun and they're not in water. So the only real way that they can get energy is from the root command. So let's see if they survive. They're trying. And so they might... Okay, so they're looking like they're pretty good. So they should grow to take over this whole island, it looks like. There's another one up here. And our water guys are still going. And since they all are kind of like created at the same time, and they all have this maturity number, they kind of reproduce in waves, which is kind of interesting. So you can see them grow, and then the ones that are a little bit worse slowly die off, and then the ones that survive reproduce again, and they kind of just keep expanding that way. So another kind of interesting feature I have is we can have these little overlays to see how many commands each organism has. So if we click like this, this will color them based on how many times in their code they filter water. And so you can see there's this line, these ones out here that are in the water filter water a bunch, which makes sense. And these ones that are on land just don't, because it doesn't really do any good for them, So we can look at, same with photosynthesis, the ones in the, next to the sun photosynthesize a lot, a ton, because it makes sense for them to do that. And then we can do the same for root. And so the same thing, you can see the ones on land, root, do the root command a bunch, which is kind of interesting, I think. It's kind of neat. And then if we go to reproduce, you can see they pretty much all do. It's interesting that the ones in the center don't really. These guys kind of aren't doing that as much, but they reproduce a lot around the edges. But the ones in the middle just die off, I guess they just don't. And I think that's kind of because they won't ever, like two organisms can't overlap, so they won't like once the space gets filled, there's nowhere to put a new organism. So it's hard for new organisms to get in here, I think. And so this is kind of interesting, I think. This is kind of neat. And I guess you can think of these as like plants. These ones are like water plants, land plants, grass or something, maybe seaweed, and then maybe just better plants that are next to the sun or something. And we can even generate a new world, and we'll see a bunch of them die off. So yeah, you see the sun moved. So all the ones that were in the sun were relying on it, and they all died because they weren't rooting; they were just photosynthesizing. So that's kind of funny. So that's what I have. I think it's kind of interesting, at least. I don't only have a few commands right now for them to do, so the plan is to add more commands so that they can do more things and hopefully have more interesting behavior. And again, my goal is not to make something. My goal is just to make something fun and interesting. So I would like to add commands to allow them to do things you would never see in real life. Like maybe some of them could be vampires, or maybe some of them could like teleport around. Some of them could have special abilities. I don't care if these commands these things that they do can be like supernatural and cool and awesome. And I think it'd be cool if at some point, well, yeah. So yeah, that's what I have. I guess thanks for watching. I think it's kind of interesting. Let me know if you have any thoughts.